My topic for today is intrauterine fetal death. It refers to the death of a fetus in utero after 20 weeks of gestation or death of a fetus weighing more than 500 grams when the gestational age is not known. It is emotionally challenging both for the doctor as well as the patient. It poses certain medical risk and it is an indicator of the country's healthcare system. It complicates around 1% of all pregnancies. The rate depends on the quality of medical care and the reporting system. Etiology. The etiology is unknown in around 50% of the cases. 5 to 10% are due to certain maternal risk factors, of which obesity comes under the highest ranking, but it is a modifiable risk factor. Then increased maternal age and probably also increased paternal age, smoking, alcohol and drug abuse, and infections like malaria, hepatitis, influenza, syphilis, toxoplasma and others, septic conditions. Then medical disorders like diabetes mellitus, hypertension, thyroid diseases, heart disease, anemia, epilepsy, autoimmune disorders, hyperpyrexia and thrombophilia. Then trauma, particularly blunt trauma to the abdomen, obstetric causes like abruption, preterm premature rupture of membrane, multiple pregnancy, cholestasis of pregnancy and RH incompatibility. Then labor related causes include preterm labor, labor dystocia and uterine rupture. Fetal causes are responsible for around 25 to 40% of the total causes, which includes chromosomal anomalies, infections, and structural defects in the fetus. Placental causes contribute to 20 to 35% of the total causes. It includes abruption, cord accidents, placental insufficiency, placenta previa, twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, chorioamnionitis, feto-maternal hemorrhage. Iatrogenic causes are external cephalic version and certain drug overdoses. So how do we diagnose a case of intrauterine fetal death? So the commonest symptom the patient will present is she will not feel her fetal movements. The signs are there will be retrogression of the positive breast changes. There will be no weight gain. The patient will have a stationary weight. Then when we go for an abdominal examination, we feel that the fundal height is reducing, tone of the uterus is diminishing, fetal movements are not felt during palpation, fetal heart sound is not audible, and we may be able to elicit a egg-shell crackling feeling of the fetal head. Sonography is 100% reliable. Along with a dead fetus, there may be features like oligohydramnios or hydrops fetalis. Then straight X-ray abdomen. It is an obsolete procedure, but there are certain signs which are seen if we go for an X-ray examination. So one is Roberts sign, which is the appearance of gas shadow in the heart and the great vessels. It appears within 12 hours of the death of the fetus. Next is Spaulding sign, where there is collapse, the skull bones collapse, but this sign it takes around 7 days to appear. Then Ball sign is hyperflexion of the fetal spine. Helix sign is presence of gas in the umbilical arteries, and also there is crowding of the rib shadow. Now next we come to a systematic approach to evaluation. Now there are varied recommendations based on experts' opinion whether evaluation has to be a detailed one or whether it is not required at all. Optimal evaluation helps us to know the chance of recurrence. It helps in future preconceptional counseling, then management of future pregnancy and also neonatal management, and to plan prenatal diagnostic procedures. However, if there is any obvious cause that is responsible for intrauterine fetal death, such as cord accidents or anencephaly, then further testing is not required, or we may go for limited testing. So evaluation, it begins with history taking. So we have to take family history of recurrent abortion, congenital anomalies, abnormal karyotype, hereditary conditions running in the family, and presence of developmental delay. Then history of certain maternal diseases like diabetes mellitus, hypertension, thrombophilias, autoimmune diseases, severe anemia, epilepsy, consanguinity, and heart disease. Then past obstetrical history of a baby born with congenital anomaly or any hereditary condition. Then history of delivering an IUGR fetus. Then gestational hypertension with adverse sequelae. History of placental abruption, history of prior intrauterine fetal death, and history of recurrent abortions. Next we come to the gross examination. So the baby, after it is born, we have to thoroughly examine the baby for presence of malformation, any skin staining, degree of maceration, and the color of the baby, whether it is pale or plethoric. Then umbilical cord, whether it was prolapsed, there is any entanglement around fetal structures, presence of hematoma or stricture, number of vessels in the cord, and the total length of the cord. Then next, amniotic fluid, we look for the color and the volume. Then placental weight, staining, adherent clots in it, any structural anomaly, velamentous insertion of the cord, presence of placental edema or hydropic changes. Then the amniotic membrane, we look for its staining and thickening. Next is fetal autopsy and karyotyping. For fetal autopsy, consent is required, and the autopsy should be performed ideally by a perinatal pathologist. If this procedure is denied, that is, the patient party doesn't give consent, we may consider post-mortem MRI. Radiographs are indicated if skeletal abnormality is suspected. Then photographs may be taken. ACOG recommends fetal karyotyping in all cases, but it should particularly performed in dysmorphic fetus, fetal growth retardation, hydropic fetus, if there are signs of chromosomal anomaly, or parents having multiple second or third trimester pregnancy losses. For aneuploidy, we may go for fluorescent in situ hybridization. And to detect small deletions, we may go for comparative genomic hybridization. Placental examination. This can help to know the chorionicity. Then we should look for cord knot, vessels, thrombosis, presence of infarcts, thrombosis, abruption, then vascular malformation, and any sign of infection. We may even send a block of placental tissue or a segment of the umbilical cord both for histopathological examination, and we may also send swabs for bacterial cultures. Maternal evaluation. So we may go for various investigations, which includes CBC, hemoglobin electrophoresis, for testing for diabetes like glycosylated hemoglobin and fasting blood sugar level, thyroid function test. Then in Rh negative women where massive feto-maternal hemorrhage is suspected, we may go for Kleher-Batke test. Then certain serological tests like test for torch infection, syphilis, parvovirus, if clinical findings suggest intrauterine infection. Then testing for anti-phospholipid antibodies and also for anti-platelet antibody. Then thrombophilia screening. However, this is not nowadays recommended by RCOG in case of prior pregnancy loss. Then if cholestasis of pregnancy is suspected, there is a chance that it may recur in 80% of cases. So that for that we have to test for bile acids. Then high vaginal and cervical swab for culture sensitivity when infection is suspected. We may also go for urine toxicology screening. So the test that we perform, it will vary from person to person. It should be individualized. Coming to the management. So our management should begin with a baseline investigation, particularly of the complete blood count and the blood coagulation profile, apart from the other routine investigations which we do in a pregnant lady. An expectant approach may be adopted as because 80% of the women goes into labor within 2 to 3 weeks of fetal date. However, we may opt for active approach, that is induction of labor. This is adopted if the lady is having emotional burden, or we suspect development of chorioamnionitis or DIC. Now, in case of fetal death less than 28 weeks, ideally we go for mifepristone followed by misoprostol. It is very effective and has got a short induction delivery interval. If the gestational age is above 28 weeks, we may go for cervical ripening followed by oxytocin induction. WHO regimen for in case of intrauterine fetal death at term pregnancy is misoprostol 25 micrograms 6 hourly, 2 doses are given. If there is no response, then the dose may be increased to 50 micrograms 6 hourly, but it should not exceed 4 doses. And oxytocin is not to be used within 8 hours of using misoprostol. It is contraindicated in cases of previous cesarean section. Then RCOG and NICE regimen of misoprostol is, if it is less than 26 weeks, we use 100 micrograms 6 hourly, maximum 4 doses. And if it is more than or equal to 27 weeks, we use 25 to 50 micrograms 4 hourly, maximum of 6 doses. Cesarean section is required in certain cases, like in cases of placenta previa or twice post-cesarean pregnancy. Membrane should not be ruptured as long as possible because there is a risk of infection. Pain management should be offered. We should have a close watch on the complete blood count, coagulation profile, and other signs of infection. Third stage of labor should be actively managed. Blood and blood products should be kept ready. Complications in case of intrauterine fetal death to the mother. So she may have infections, there may be labor dystocia, then postpartum hemorrhage, retained placenta, placental abruption, then DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, shock, renal failure, sepsis, psychological disorders, very rarely maternal death. Post-delivery period is also important. We need to provide emotional support and counseling to the mother. We should use agents for suppression of lactation, which includes tight breast support, then dopamine agonist or estrogen. Then counseling is to be done for future pregnancy, for early antenatal visits and preconceptional testing. Assurance is to be given in cases of non-recurring causes, and also contraceptive counseling. Now there are certain RCOG recommendations for the management of future pregnancy. So in case of future pregnancy, patient should come for a preconceptional or prenatal visit where a detailed medical and obstetric history should be taken. She should be evaluated and workup of previous stillbirth should be done. Determine the recurrence risk. Then if she smokes, that has to be stopped. Weight loss in case of obese women. Genetic counseling is to be done if there is a family history of any genital condition. Medical problems like diabetes should be managed. Thrombophilia workup is required in specific cases. And support and reassurance. In the first trimester, a dating sonography is to be done, screening for pregnancy-associated plasma protein A, beta-HCG and nuchal translucency, and folic acid supplementation as early as possible, which should ideally begin before pregnancy, 1 month prior to the beginning of pregnancy. Then in the second trimester, a detailed anatomic survey of the fetus is to be done at 18 to 20 weeks. Maternal serum screening, which is called quadruple marker, is done, and blood investigations are to be carried out. Third trimester, sonographic screening for fetal growth restriction after 28 weeks of pregnancy. Admission at critical case in any high risk case. Then fetal daily kick count should be started. Fetal daily kick should be counted by the mother starting at 28 weeks of pregnancy. Antepartum fetal surveillance test should be started at 32 weeks or 1 to 2 weeks earlier than the prior stillbirth. And weekly fetal heart rate, biophysical profile and Doppler study should be done if possible.